Having broadly defined comparison, I now want to turn to two famous examples of literary comparison, both taken from Shakespeare's sonnets. Now, though they're rather obvious examples, I hope that they will help explain how literary texts can use the idea of comparison internally as part of the way they create meaning, as well as to see how to compare them. Sonnet 18 starts with a comparison. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So I'll read it now. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. And every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. This ingenious, even audacious poem starts by celebrating the beauty of an unknown addressee and finishes by celebrating itself and art. The poem suggests that while the beauty of the natural world is ephemeral, the beauty of a poem lasts for as long as the poem lasts. And it does that by opening with its famous comparison. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? This rhetorical question prepares for an account of all the ways that the addressee is not like a summer's day. These are dependent on us as readers having an idea of what an idealised summer's day is like. The addressee is more lovely and more temperate, implying that these qualities associated with the summer's day are to be found in increased quantities in the person being celebrated. The temporary and fragile nature of the beauty of summer is stated. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. And as readers of the poem, we pay attention to the specificity of the words being used. What does it mean for the wind to be described in the plural? Why are the winds rough? Are there other synonyms that might have been chosen? Why are the buds of May darling? And so on. Now, since this poem is a sonnet, we might think specifically about the use of rhymes and of the use of assonance or other features of poetic language which help to form and create its meaning. So to interpret this poem, it's necessary to ask a series of questions about it which probe those and other choices made by its author. But in the context that it's being used as an example here, what we might also want to note is that the comparison is being made between a person and a non-person. A summer's day isn't an object, it's a period or passage of time, and it's also an idealised and non-permanent state. So the comparison isn't of two obviously like things. The poem obliges us to see through its examples how things that are not precisely like each other can have shared qualities, things in common, which makes comparing them meaningful. And in bringing together the expected with the unexpected, we're able to see and to understand in new ways. So, one of the things this example shows us is how productive comparison can be as a process. Now, here's a second example to show us how a series of negative comparisons might be used. Here is Shakespeare's sonnet 130. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be black, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Here then, the sonnet builds its comparisons by using and rejecting a series of tropes set up as being cliched formulae. It's as if Shakespeare had read a number of clumsy celebrations and rejected them one by one. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. coral is far more red than her lips read, suggests that a poorer writer might have made a positive comparison between her eyes and the sun. Her eyes are like the sun, or her lips are like coral. Positive comparisons are here set up as being weak, reductive and meaningless because they've been emptied of meaning through overuse. Instead, this all too human mistress is rare because she's the object of his love. That's all, and that, for this poem, is sufficient. Now, how might we compare these two sonnets written by the same author that use comparison so explicitly? What they show is, in terms of their subject and how they treat it, that comparison can lead either to exciting possibilities or to tired cliches. Both poems embrace newness, albeit in different ways. And in doing this, they offer a lesson to us as writers wanting to learn how to compare text productively and sensitively. Using a model similar to that offered by my description and comparison of two offices, which I started with, you might want to think about what these two literary texts have in common. They're both, for instance, by the same author. They're both sonnets. Both are dependent on ideas of comparison to make their points. However, they also depart from each other in key ways. One's directly addressing a lover, the other describing his mistress to implied listeners. So you might further ask about the impact of these different addressees on the way the poems are written and on the specific language employed here by Shakespeare. Starting with simple comparisons then and developing them gradually, you'll be able to build up more complex ideas about what these two sonnets have in common and the ways they differ. And then you'll have to ask and be able to answer the crucial question, why? It's not enough to say what they're doing, which rhymes are being chosen, for instance. Instead, you need to move from that kind of description to analysis and be able to say why Shakespeare is doing what he's doing. In this manner, you'll move beyond describing something you observe to analysing it and accounting for its significance. And in this shift from description to analysis, using detailed reading to justify your claims, you will find, I hope, that you enter into the art of comparison and that it isn't always as hard as it might initially seem. Now, what happens when you add a third text or object to the comparison, though? You now need to think about how to handle that. In fact, what you need to be doing is just more of the same. The basic techniques for comparison are not going to change. So in effect, you continue with what you've already learned to do. Now, I've told you about my current and previous offices, but have I told you about the one I used to be in before either of those? No, I thought not. Let me tell you about it now. My office is on the 3rd floor of 9 Clarendon Road. Since the house number is house 9 and the office number is 19 and the floor is on the 3rd floor, my office number is 9319.